I got a REST services Java Spring interview now, so let's join the call. Java REST services Spring Boot. It's real interview. Hello.
I'm actually visually impaired myself.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm already in the call. Okay, bye. Hi.
Hi. Will run stack, and this particular team is right at the heart of it, looking at exactly how do we facilitate all of that communication.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Sounds good. Cool. Right. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I'm Praveen. I'm a contractor or consulting, working in many clients like REST services, front end. I've used Java, Spring Boot, Node, quite a wide variety of technology. Like before microservices came, we've also used SOAP and double web services concept. Before that, you used Java native, EJB as well. So quite extensive experience with Java, writing microservices and using them as well.
Cool. Cool. What was the? So I was just looking at your CV. So
Open it for you.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about your latest project?
Yeah, so this is a core filing project, the last one, which is basically helps in filing tax return. The goal of this, like it's usually one file, one service which uploads in a government site and it throws out a bunch of error. But that obviously that architecture has a problem because users are getting too many errors and obviously they're submitting invalid files which is getting thrown out. This affecting the scalability of the service. So what we came up with is breaking into multiple small services. So the main services which was deployed is gold, so we left it as it is, so we didn't even have to touch that services. So but before that we what we call is we put a live portal where user can start playing with the file before actually submitting the file. So when they load this file like in the browser, it actually start processing it, and say filing consists of 30-40 pages. So instead of processing the whole thing together, we process the first page and start displaying the user the error which the service is thrown from the processing of first page, and the user was shown like red or green or yellow. So if everything was good, it will automatically stop on the first page whichever has error. So it will start processing the first page and say, okay, first page is, and it made it interactive. Like as the browser was processing the results, user could actually see the feedback coming in, right? He can say, okay, page 1 looks good, page 2. The moment they get an error, they see the error page, like third page has an error, like, hey, third page has some warning, please deal with them. And it has pretty useful. So that reduced, like instead of having one service, we reduced it to 38 services or something like that. And it obviously made very fast, like instead of user waiting for minutes with nothing in the screen, now user getting feedback within millisecond. Like in the moment they uploaded it, the first page look good, first page has errors, and they start seeing feedback right away. So quite, and obviously the original service which was not even touched suddenly could tackle 100 times more, 100% more load. Yeah, go ahead.
And what was your specific role?
So it was to divvying up this service, mega service, and coming up with the user interaction and what services were needed to support this, and then calling those services. Like behind the scene, it was reusing the same kind of somewhere the logic was there. So we were reusing the logic whatever was there already, and we were hooking up into as a microservices into usable form, like how to divide the services, how to make the API gateway, the authentication part, authorization part, and other things like that.
Cool. Sean, anything you want to?
Okay. You've mentioned a lot there, and I haven't got time to probe it all, unfortunately. mentioned that you had an old service, okay, and you mentioned you didn't touch that service. How did you deal with the data that that service was holding? So within a microservices environment, each microservice should hold its own data, right? That's the kind of best practice.
That's go ahead.
But when you're moving from a monolithic to a microservices architecture, what did you do about the data that monolithic service held?
Yeah, so basically this is, tax filing. This is one-off information. So the customer has a big file, XBLR file generated from some, however it's generated, Excel file or maybe CSV format, right? So you have the data, the user has the data, not that the server hold it. Once you give the data to the government, it's gone. You will never get to see the data unless there's an error. Then the government will come after 3 months that, hey, you filed your tax return was rejected for such and such reason. But otherwise this was more or less, stateless kind of services. Right. The user enter the data and we validated the data. If everything's good, look good, we give him opportunity to hit back that same monolithic service at the end of the whole process.
Right. So it was a stateless based
kind of thing. Yeah, the user has the data. But here we did maintain some state because we didn't want it to lose you could start doing the processing and may not finish it, right? Yeah, then we did hold the data. So we did hold a lot of data in our database. The processing data was all hidden in our data because once you loaded the CSV file, your CSV file is junk, right? Because we know that it has 100 errors. We don't want you to start all over every day. You come back again, you do the whole day processing and you come back again tomorrow you have to start. No. So once you gave us the file, we did hold a whole lot of data and it was associated with your user ID.
Right, but because you had multiple services operating on the back end, did you have one database or did you have multiple databases?
So security was its own database, which was handled by Liferay. It's kind of a SaaS, and the rest was all in one. You can say it was multiple table but with one database.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. And did you make that decision, or was that a decision that was made architecturally for you?
No, basically we had the restriction. We have to use a Liferay database, so they didn't want it to buy us any hardware. So, we were really tight budget on everything. So we had to just piggyback on the Liferay. And we were holding data for 1 or 2 days or maybe 4 days. Once you submitted it, we had to thrash the data anyway. So once you submitted it, we deleted your data, it's gone. Because once you submitted a tax return, all you need to maintain is a tax return confirmation file, and that's it. And you will be given back the file which you updated file, and you could save it in your local disk if you wanted. But as a filing services, we didn't want it to hold your data because we were not getting any money for holding the data, and obviously it's a library, GDPR issue, right? We don't want to hold your data,
Yeah, it's okay. Don't count.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at the kind of duration of the project. So what was the length of time between you sort of starting and completing that project?
It was kind of like, so it was done in 2 stints. So first we did something and then we got another client. So first instant was for initially before MOD, Ministry of Defense. So it was a 3 month. The second instance was there's another for, I think it was Greece Bank. For the Greece, so they were doing some processing with these guys and they were having a lot of problems. So they wanted to somehow extend that to this Greece bank. So same principle applied to another processing. So, and the process we made is such a way that it could be deployed to basically any tax filing services.
I guess what I'm trying to understand is from project start to finish, how long would it take you to determine what was required and assess the business requirements, and then turn that into a kind of plan and
so it will not, yeah, so initially first week was called assessment, you can say sprint, understanding the requirement, and then we developed 5 sprint and we developed what we will do in this. So first sprint, just planning, requirement, understanding. Second week was more or less high level framework component and designing what we need. And then from third sprint, we started delivering the functionality. So it was the way it was that you could do infinite. So we train the team as well. So core filing has its own 5 or 6 member team members. So we train them to, like, in future if they want to do with another service, they they don't have to call me. Unfortunately, they had to call me for another service, but the way we trained the team was they need not have to call me,
And how would you estimate the complexity of the tasks?
So it is based on, we give a story point. So it is like, blind cards, okay, 13, 9, you play the checker game. And based on, there were some client guys, some core filing guys, and some of the other developers. We were playing all this poker game and we were estimating with that. Sometimes they just lifted the hand and have to put a guess. So I put a guess. So usually the way I work is, I see this and how long I will take, and I put a checker based on the team performance. So we, poker game, there's a sprint planning poker game.
Yeah. So how would you handle a situation where you've estimated that a piece of work will take a specific length of time, but you have a bottleneck within the sprint? What's your strategy for handling that?
So basically, before we take up the sprint, there's something called backlog grooming session we have in a sprint. So before we take up, so we do this backlog grooming, and in that we analyze the ticket in detail, right? And if there's any bottleneck, we will not even take the ticket. So we will know upfront that, hey, say as you say last minute some bottleneck come, like somebody said that, hey, this database will be available and somehow it is not available, right? So we will work around the problem. Like we will either mock the data, create the data ourselves. So we will step up into the shoes to make sure that we deliver what we could. Something could not be delivered, we will raise another ticket for that.
Okay. Let's assuming you're developing an API that is designed to upload a piece of data, but the action that the API fronts on the server has to happen only once. Okay, so think about things like charging credit cards. That's a classic example. How would you ensure that the action is performed once, no matter how many times the client sends the same request?
So we have this something called unique identifier of the record, right? So if you are say charging a credit card, so it's like we know who is paying, to whom we are paying, and how much is the amount, and we know the date. So for given a situation of date, time, and say add another factor called time. So with these parameters, we will come to know whether it is the same transaction being repeated. Suppose it is the same transaction amount in the same hour. Obviously, we will get another, so it will throw an error like saying, hey, confirm with the user, like, hey, you have paid to the same client, exact same. Are you sure you want to make a double payment to the same client? So if there's a duplicate payment happening in the same hour, we will get a double confirmation from the client like, hey, you are trying to pay the exact same amount, 23.23. Suppose the amount paid was 23.12, then it will go through.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, can you define the test pyramid for me?
Exactly. So basically the way we work in microservices, right? Like we write a lot of test cases for all our services and all our integration layer, all our Java layer. So we have a lot of test cases for our each program, right? Each Java. And then we have integration, like, it goes like a pyramid. So we have little less number of integration testing, and we have even little less number of end-to-end testing. So that's what is called a test pyramid. But personally, I feel like end-to-end testing is more important. Personally, that's my feeling. But that's what the test pyramid as per theoretically means,
Okay, how much test coverage would you expect to have on a project?
I will say end-to-end 100%. Like every requirement has to have end-to-end testing. Business requirement. That's my understanding. Business requirement has to be 100%. Unit code could be 80% is acceptable to me. But I want 100% end-to-end testing coverage. That's every business requirement has to be tested. Not the non-scalability and other stuff requirement, those are tough to say, but at least the business requirement, as you said, the credit card payment, those. So 100% of the business use cases, not the scalability and NPRF, not those things, but the business requirement should have 100% test coverage from end-to-end perspective, so that whenever I change a code, I don't have to worry that did I break something. All the test cases will be run automatically. In my CI/CD pipeline.
Okay, how would you? Let's assume you've got you're defining a microservice, okay, and you know that it has to be scalable, right? So scalability is a requirement for this. There are several different ways you could achieve it. Okay, can you talk me through some of the ways that you've used